Today is Wednesday, January 8th, 2025, and this is the Hendrick Hudson Board of Education meeting. May I have a motion to call the meeting to order? Second. All in favor? The Board of Education will be moving into executive session for the purpose of collective negotiations under the Taylor Law, medical, financial, credit, or employment history of a particular person or corporation, or matters leading to the appointment or employment history of a particular person or corporation, or matters leading to the appointment or employment or promotion or demotion or discipline or suspension or removal of a particular person or corporation. Do I have a motion to move into executive session?
Motion.
Second. All in favor? The Board of Education will return at approximately 7 p.m. Welcome back to the Hendrick Hudson Board of Education meeting. I'd like to start by standing for the Pledge of
The United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We're going to start with Mr. Trombley tonight.
Can you approve the agenda, please? Can you approve the agenda?
Yeah, he's going to talk about the recognition first.
Oh, okay.
So good evening, everyone. Sorry we're a little late coming from our executive session. As it's becoming a tradition and also to celebrate some of the good things that are going on in the district, the board has also identified in our strategic plan that we want to take time when we gather to celebrate students, staff, and our community's good events. We have been doing a student recognition portion of each meeting. This evening we had to reschedule that due to the student being unable to attend, but we will reschedule that and we wish the student well, and we look forward to celebrating the student at a later date.
That moves us on to our agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda as stated? Motion to approve. Second. All in favor? Are there any audience comments on non-agenda items tonight?
No.
Okay. That moves us to the consent agenda. Does anyone have anything they'd like to remove from the consent agenda this evening? No? Okay. Can I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Motion.
Second. Second. All in favor? That moves us to audience comments on agenda items.
We do. Christine, yes.
Hello, happy budget season. A few questions. I've reviewed the PowerPoint that y'all posted, and I know that they're not going to get all answered tonight, just questions for general as you go through all these next few months of conversation. I still would like to know how you are planning to assess the impact of the current elementary structure, not just on the 3 numbers that you provided in a recent meeting, but we do have a dwindling cessation fund and fund balance, and if this is working, great, but if not, we should know, especially financially. But that's something that I'm curious about, generally speaking, how it's impacting our students. In the initial budget development questions, you ask if we are providing an equitable education from building to building. I'd love to know what you think is needed for an equitable education to be provided, what your success criteria is and how you are going to assess that, and when and how does teacher voice come into that process. You also asked if we are providing a safe environment with regard to maintaining facilities, and based on the alarming reports that I saw from Westchester County Food Services, 3 of 4 of our cafeterias have a plethora of violations, so I'm guessing the answer to that is no, and is that work included in the bond, and what are we going to be doing in the meantime? You proposed 2 different budget projections based on how much of the fund balance we use. I know these are very initial, but it doesn't really show what that means for our future. So I am curious, if we do spend that estimated $7.45 million to keep our taxes down to 4.2%, what would that leave us with, and how does that impact our future? If we do that, because we continue to keep our taxes low with the looming future ahead, if we do that this year, will we have to pay significantly more next year, and would it be better to have a gradual increase rather than be slammed one year when we're desperate? And generally speaking, I would really love, and I think the community deserves, an honest and transparent look into the future, because we really need to know if we're going to be able to afford to live here, and if we can, if it will be worth it to stay, if the programs will continue to be robust, and if our teachers will continue to be paid, because the last 3 years haven't really given us a lot of hope about those things. So, thank you.
Thank you, Christine. So we'll address some of those questions, particularly on our financial projections in terms of what the use of fund balance and our ability to provide our best understanding of what the future might look like, because there are so many variables that go into educational funding and building and supporting educational programs. So we're going to continue to give you our best understanding of that as we stand today with the information we know. And as we've done with the board before, we'll continue to provide during this budget season those financial projections as any variables that could impact this year's budget and our future projections come about. And I'll definitely get back to you and provide those questions at our next board meeting on those other items that you brought up. So thank you.
That brings us to our superintendent's update. No, sorry, excuse me, everyone. We're on our budget presentation, administrative budget, capital, financial forecasting, and debt.
So Christine, you actually did steal my introduction. I always like to say welcome to budget season, but thank you for welcoming us to budget season. And one of the jobs that we do have as a administration is to be transparent in how we build budgets, and we take great pride in doing that. And this evening continues some of that work. We started this work in early December, at least presenting to the public on some of the factors and some of our approaches to developing the budget. Our interim assistant superintendent for business, Ms. Jill Figuerello, will continue a little bit of that work, what goes into our thoughts on how we build a budget. And we're also going to share with you, as we know now, some of the best information that we have as we're developing that budget. Just to give you some background, we've started budget conversations in October in terms of planning our process, planning the calendar. We also began asking our building administrators to begin their budget process. And the most recent major update is that we have been holding meetings with those building level administrators who have worked with the leadership teams within their buildings, which could include students or teachers, to help build the best program budget from their perspective. They have been presenting to us, and we will continue to have some of those meetings. And as we continue to go through the budget development process, we are getting daily changes to the variables that impact our budget, whether it be on the revenue side, whether it be on the proposed cost side. Keeping in mind at the end, the transparency is what we're doing right now. That the transparency in our best guess at what we need to spend in all areas of our school system. But at the end, our school community, the board will adopt, and our school community will vote on a spending amount based upon our best guess on where we need to spend that money. And so we continue that work this evening. So I will turn it over to Ms. Figuerello for her presentation.
Good evening. I'm going to do this from my seat. I'm going to do this from my seat. Technically can't see the board, so I'm going to be looking down, and I apologize. Okay, so tonight I just want to go over some of the presentation objectives as we're going to work through each of the slides. So we, excuse me, as we prepared for the budget, we discussed anticipated challenges, opportunities, and financial trends that will influence the budget overall. We'll share preliminary factors impacting the tax cap calculation. We'll present the proposed budget for the Office of the Superintendent, for the business, finance, benefits, and capital functions tonight. We'll review long-term financial projections based on current information, and we'll solicit the board to give us their guidance on what they feel are their priorities, parameters, and areas of budget that they'd like to see us, address as we work through the budget. So some of the initial questions that I need to, and we need to as a team ask are, is to look at preliminary financial recommendations based on what do we know right now? What do we know for expenses? What do we know for revenues? That's the first place we begin, because there are a lot of variables, and there's variables that change throughout the process. We take a look at our prior fiscal year, where did we end up? Are we meeting budgetary expectations? Do we have any unpredictable expenses that we have to address based on last year's outcomes? And are we taking those into consideration this year before we start the process? Are we providing equitable education from building to building that aligns with our curriculum and our district's mission and vision? And are we looking at our environment throughout the school district with regard to security and maintaining our facilities? And again, are we providing the staff development and training for all, meaning not just teachers, all staff? We have monitors, we have bus drivers, we have all walks of life that run the school district. And we need to make sure that all of them are getting proper training and who come face to face with students every day. So before we even start with numbers, I have to think about who are our stakeholders, understand this culture of this district, especially me, I'm new here. And I think in every district that culture can be different. State aid, what do we know when we start crunching the numbers? Well, right now we know nothing about state aid too much. We know that last year's numbers are probably going to be the starting point. We'll have more information on that. I believe January 14th, there'll be a state of the state address. So I put the 15th there. Obviously, we'll have to take a look at what they're presenting, and that will just be preliminary as well. Those state aid figures do not become final until just before we vote on the budget. So sometime in April, when the deadline comes to adopt the budget, we'll know more of that. But I mean, we need to know way before that. But they can change right up until that point. So those variables can vary. Tax cap, for this district, there are 9 elements. And I say that because some districts have pilots, some don't. So those are things that we have to take into consideration when we do that calculation. We're still waiting on our building aid and our pilot information right now. So when I solidify those 2 numbers, we will be able to have what we call the allowable tax cap information for us. Spending trends, what budget codes did we have to exceed last year, or the current year, right? Because we're looking at this year, but I'm also looking back at last year, because this year, I only know what we know as of today. We still have a whole 6 months of spending left. And, you know, if the only year that's final is last year, so I have to go from there. And we look at the current year, what have we spent year to date? Did we have any revenue shortfalls? Are we following policies? Are we making sure that we're adhering to the board policies when we're planning our budget? Mandates, there's plenty of them. So what are they? How many of them are unfunded? So the unfunded ones, obviously, we have to account for in the budget and don't get through the state aid, avenue of state aid. So and then lastly, in the fiscal area of concern would be our transparency and our communicative ability to communicate with the community, let them know what's going on every step of the way throughout the budget process so that they can be part of that conversation as well. Some of our systemic needs, what is going on with the housing market? That's something, you know, we have to think about when we're talking about tax cap and use of fund balance. What are our values increasing, decreasing? What is the rate of inflation? Because part of the tax cap calculation is allowing us to use the CPI. But the CPI, as we all know, is not 2%. Not currently anyway. And if it's below 2%, we don't get to go to 2%. But if it's above 2%, we only get to go to 2%. So there's, you know, I think that's an important message for people, is that at that point, we need to make that up in another way. So who makes up our school population? Do we have additional special education needs this year? Do we have additional E&L needs this year? What are our student scores? What is the wealth and income within the borders of our district? These are all factors we need to take into consideration. So here are some of the major budget drivers for 25-26. We have our healthcare premiums that are part of our bargaining unit contracts for all employees, increasing 5%. Well, I got some good news yesterday afternoon, late. That increase is going to be 3.9%. So I'm happy to say that that's one of the lower percentage over the last couple of years. So that we're part of the consortium. Health care comes through to the district. We participate with 14 other school districts with our BOCES. So off of that 600,000, probably about $100,000 less.
Jill, while you're taking a breath, and I apologize, I should have done this before. Just for procedure here, Jill's going to give us a lot of information. We normally will have shorter budget presentations, but Jill's going to give us a lot of information tonight. And I know that we're going to have some really good questions for her, but we're going to let Jill go through other than what I just did, not interrupt if I could, so we could get through the presentation.
Yeah, hold
and give time
off
for
on the
questions.
questions till the end, and then we can go through them. Our salaries and payroll taxes are increasing overall, estimated at this point 5.8%. That equates to about $2.7 million overall. Our pension costs, non-teaching, we're looking at a 1.3% increase, which equates to about $171,000 more in the budget. Teaching salaries, pension is actually decreasing, but we have to remember that from year to year, our salaries increase, right? So it still means that even applying a lesser percentage can cause an increase overall. So we're only looking at a very small increase there, $12,000. Capital upkeep, we have to remember unplanned replacement of vehicles, machinery, capital equipment throughout the district that can cause high, impact to the budget on expensive items that are unplanned, and students obviously can be impacted by that. Our debt is increasing this year, 19.8%, but you're talking about a $3 million bill against a $100 million budget. So of course, it looks like a big increase. We're retiring debt. It'll decrease that about $350,000 next year, and that'll be lowered to about 8.4%. Cessation fund revenues. Those are the mitigation funds for anybody who's listening that doesn't know. Mitigation funds being received for the elimination of the electric generation facility. They are going to be decreasing for this school district $2.2 million annually until they're completely depleted in 28-29, which means we will no longer get funds from New York State for that facility being abandoned. So how does the district continue to fund its programs and staff without those tax dollars? And then each year, just remember, that's not the only thing that's going to go away. We're going to also be increasing our expenses from year to year because of inflation, because of everything else, the contracts, the teacher contracts, the staff contracts. All of those contractual items will be increasing while we're losing revenue. So, the continuous use of our fund balance to make those ends meet is what we need to be concerned about. How do we add to the fund balance annually? Because if we don't, again, as mentioned earlier, our facilities will, they'll go downhill. We'll have to make staff cuts. I mean, our staff and our benefits are 75% of our budget. So if you think about the things that we have to cut in the budget, those are the things that are going to make an impact, not the materials and the supplies, not the small pieces of equipment. It's going to end up having to be staff cuts. If we don't plan, that's what I'm saying. I'm not saying we're going to do that. I'm saying that we need to really consider what those things are so that we can plan for the future. So we don't want to diminish programs. We don't want to provide less opportunities for students, and we don't want our budgets to become unsustainable. These are a few more budget drivers for 25-26. We have, right now, as it is, we think we're going to have out-of-district student tuitions around the same amount that we have currently, which is about $2.5 million of revenue coming in every year. Our interest is expected to increase. We've been using some new investment instruments, and we see that increasing. Our Westchester County sales tax is going up. I guess that means people are spending more money. Loss of tax revenue, again, due to the cessation funding going down, and again, use of the fund balance to close the gap between expenses and revenues. So these are some of the changes, I'll just go over them briefly, that we've done and we've made to the budget this year. We were focusing on identifying and prioritizing some different types of expenses, in some cases reclassifying them. So in particular, when we go through the line-by-line budget, I think sometime in March, you'll see that things are reclassified to different categories of expense, such as E&L costs. Right now, our E&L costs are being coupled with our general ed teaching codes. They are going to be broken out. The state requires them to be broken out, so we're going to start doing that. Materials and supplies for non-teaching staff. In other words, right now, the way the budget was structured, we were using the budget lines for teachers' supplies and materials for the offices. The office equipment, supplies and materials were being taken from that same line. So this will break it out more and just give us some more definition within the budget. Reimbursable staff expenses by department. Currently in the budget, they're all budgeted on one line within the benefit category. We're going to have each department and building represent their travel, mileage, meal reimbursement, whatever's in their contract for those types of expenses to be in their individual budgets. Centralized copier expense added to the technology budget. In the past, we have had all of the copiers and equipment that's related to each building and department within their budget. We are now going to be getting those services through an installment purchase agreement that we have with BOCES, which will bring us in some additional aid. So that will be within the technology budget, and Panitha will talk more about that when she goes through her budget. Textbooks and curriculum in the arts and education program are now being budgeted solely by the curriculum department. That person will be deciding and that way aligning the curriculum within the district from building to building. So those textbooks, the textbook cost and the arts and ed programs will be allocated through that department. Furniture and equipment, again, allocated through operations and maintenance. It'll provide a more sustainable and rotating schedule for replacement of those things. Of course, all the departments and buildings are sharing with us their needs, but they'll be handled through that department. Okay, so what can change between now and the budget adoption? Again, go over a couple of those things. We're going to have changes in enrollment right up until August, honestly. I mean, even though we stop in April and May, because we have to have the budget vote, we're still going to have changes in enrollment right through the summer, and even further into the school year. We could get some grants and aid. That could help us out. Again, the inflation, despite whatever it is, we were stuck with the 2% limit in the tax cap. Our state aid formulas can change. Unfunded mandates can, rear their ugly heads. Economic downturn, so are we maximizing investments? Staff retirements, that can affect our budget. Unanticipated expenses in the current school year could affect what we budget for next year. And then being sure that we're renegotiating vendor contracts, to make sure we're getting the best prices for what we're purchasing. Bargaining unit contractual changes, if a bargaining unit contract is coming up for renegotiation, I believe there's one next year, make sure we're doing things that are affordable and sustainable going forward. So this slide is, I'm going to walk you through the tax cap. I'll try to go quickly. It's a lot of information. Again, these numbers are not final. So I think people need to understand how it's calculated, and I believe all the steps here will kind of lay that out for you. So we start with last year's, or the current year's tax levy, so $52.1 million. We have an offset adjustment. Our auditors have adjusted an amount of money that was probably created by, I want to say, debt. When we finance our debt, it isn't always a set rate, or it can fluctuate from the time that we do the budget to the time that we actually have to make the payments. So there's a little bit of an adjustment, $154,000. Our allowable tax growth factor, which is 1.0058, that is unique for every school district in the state. It measures the value of your homes. within the district. And we're allowed to, well, we're not allowed to, we have to, as part of the formula, take that step and apply the growth factor. Brings us to 52.4 million. We add back the pilots that we took out last year, and then we add in the capital expenses, which involve the building aid. The building aid is unknown at this time. That's the figure from last year, so we remove that. And then we apply the 2% tax cap, the 2% CPI increase, because we know it's going to be above that, no doubt. The pilots, again, we add in the new pilot amounts. I don't have the new pilot amounts for the current year upcoming, so I used the number from last year. It's going to be similar. It's not going to be exactly the same, so it is going to change. So our tax cap before exclusions is 51,069,064. And then we add in the new debt expense for the upcoming year. And again, the building aid's unknown, so I will add in last year's building aid figure just to cover that for now. And then we have no exclusion for the pension plan because it has to be an increase of over 2% in order to take an exclusion, even though there's growth in the pension plans, both just for the non-teaching. So it brings us to a assumed number at this point of 54,298,472. So if everything were to be exactly as I have it on here, that's what our tax cap, our allowable tax cap would be. So some of the, just to review, preliminary considerations are staying within the tax cap, looking at our state aid variables, remembering that our bond rating is affected by our use of fund balance and our ability to maintain fund balance. And I say that like that because we do have a capital project coming up. We're going to be starting that, funding that at the end of this year with budget anticipation notes. That's how you start out with the project. When the project is complete, we'll be bonding the project. The bond rating makes the difference when you go to borrow money, and you want to make sure that you're taking a good look at how you're using your fund balance from year to year. There's always new economic realities, and protecting the investment in education while trying to provide equity and close those achievement gaps. So I'm going to turn it over to Mike. He's going to talk about the superintendent's budget.
Thank you, Jill. Allow us to do a quick handoff digitally back to the hybrid days. So Jill brought you through in that portion of the presentation, again, various considerations related to budget development. Our process here will be over the next couple months at our monthly, 2 times monthly board meetings, is to have budget code owners present their preliminary budgets based upon their best knowledge of what they need to fund their programs in the best way possible for next year. So I will lead that and model that effort by presenting mine as the first department to present their budget. Please know that this is a preliminary budget. It will change just as everything does until we adopt the budget. As we gain more information, whether it be changes in the revenue side, changes in the expenses side, or changes in the board's input on what they'd like to see in the budget. So if you'll excuse me for 1 second, I'm a presenter in this, but I'm also a viewer, so we can do this from our seats here. So in terms of my superintendent's budget, what we will do, I'll use how you will see the departments presenting their budgets as well. We will provide you with the account code. That's a general accounting code. If you want to nerd out, you can learn to read what code it is by its number. We'll help the board do that on our line-by-line budget day of shared fund. We'll give you what the topic of the code is. We'll give you an explanation of some of the anticipated expenditures or previous expenditures that occur within that code. We'll give you the actual cost of the 23-24 budget. We'll give you what we anticipated in our budget request last year, and we will give you the year-to-date as best known, as close to when the individual code owner presents. We'll give you the proposed budget and the change and any major reasons why we feel that change was there. So you'll see that we have a major increase in my 1010-490 BOCES code that deals with services such as board docs. We have heard feedback from our community that board docs is not user-friendly on that side, so we're looking at a more user-friendly tool called, it's a board docs tool called Diligent Community, and we're proposing that we make the switch to that product, which will allow for easy accessibility and translation options. We also we want to make sure that I believe that we have a tool in there that will also help engage in community engagement and feedback, which is ThoughtExchange, which we'll demonstrate a little bit tonight. If we go to the next slide, you'll see continuing on of the board and superintendent's codes, you'll see a large increase in the 106400 code. It is best practice for us, a budget costs money. It costs money to rent the machines, to notice, to also pay the election workers. We, in the past, the district had only budgeted for one vote. If the district needed, for whatever reason, to have a second vote, there were not funds allocated specifically for that. The district would have to take from existing funds to cover that. So we are recommending, and it is best practice, that you plan for an anticipated second vote, and that would increase that code by some funding there. And then if you look into the contractual code out of the superintendent's office, in my contract, the board does provide reimbursement for tuition for me, and that is why it's captured. That is captured in this budget line there. If we continue on with the superintendent and board's budget, you'll see that we have a decrease in the BOCES code for the superintendent and an increase in the Keenan Bean, our legal counsel, represented by, I believe that is just an increase in what we look back on usage to say that we wanted to make sure we budgeted for what we were actually spending on. And you'll see that it is a total increase from year to year proposed of $91,000. So that is how that's the superintendent and board's budget, but that's also how you will see the budget code owners present their proposed budgets to you as well. And then I'll turn it back over to Jill so she can present her budget.
Right, so I'm going to give you an overview of our department budget as well. There aren't too many fluctuations in this budget throughout, but we'll touch on each one of them. The auditing and financial contractual, very slight increase of $2,000. As you can see there, and you can look in the presentation what that is spent on. Our administrative contractual is going up slightly. That can fluctuate. We have money in there for additional lawsuits or tax certiorari's in the district. Those are refunds of property tax in case that occurs. Our health and welfare services that we pay other non-public schools have increased slightly too. So $11,000 increase there. Materials and supplies that are strictly for the business office. They supplement, we do supplement the materials and supplies district-wide, and we do that. I put money there. There's always an ask for something later that someone didn't ask for when they were budgeting. So I usually put somewhat of a small cushion there, but again, it's only going up very slightly. That's the way it's been done in the past too. $1,700. The last bottom line there, administrative, capital, and security that we get through our BOCES contract. I think our BOCES contract is earmarked to go up between 3% and 4%, correct? So an additional $38,000 there. This line is our undistributed. The next one are employee benefits. That is our health insurance, our pension costs, our payroll taxes, our unemployment costs, our workers' comp, and our life insurance. So you're going to see a big increase there, $1.1 million. Bonds. Okay, this area of the budget has always been budgeted, I just want to bring this up, on one line. So you can see in 23, 24, 24, 25, it has always been all on one line for the principal and interest for all the instruments that we have debt on, which is bonds, bond anticipation notes, energy performance contract, and other leases for network equipment. That line is, I broke it out, is how it should be. It's how we were supposed to report it to the state. I'm not saying that it wasn't done. It was broken out later when they reported to the state, but in the budget itself, it was represented like on 1 or 2 lines. So I felt that it should be broken out. So again, that is increasing $699,000, and I think I mentioned it earlier, it's going back down the following year. We have $350,000 dropping off of that debt schedule. You know, different instruments come due at different times. The interfund transfers, that's strictly for the extended school year program that we have in the district. The general operating budget has to cover 20% of the cost of that. So, of course, the costs go up every year for that. So I put $100,000 in there, a little increase of $6,000. So overall, budget within my purview of the budget is the big thing is the benefits and the debt. And right now, we're looking at almost a $2 million increase overall.
And if I could just, before Jill takes us through some financial projections, when we talk about transparency, again, the end budget result, the board adopts and the community votes on a total funding amount. The transparency is in the presentation and the discussion and the possible adjustments around these individual budget lines within the budget codes. So just an overall process. So when we go do that line by line, you'll see some changes between now, this presentation, and then. And that should happen because we're constantly responding to variable changes such as income and revenue, and also what we need to do to make to respond to any input that the board would like to see.
Okay, so this is really small. You can't see it. You can see it at home, and you can see it on your computers if you have access. So on the next 2 slides, I'm just going to go back and forth a little bit. I have 2 scenarios that they're built off of scenarios that you've seen before from former projections. So again, making assumptions, our state aid, I have at a stagnant 15 million right now because I don't know what it is. Our BOCES aid, again, kept it pretty much in the same ballpark as what it was this current year. The tuitions I mentioned, the interest income I mentioned, the sales tax I mentioned, the interfund transfers, the pilots I left the same because I don't know what they are yet, and then there's the cessation fund money. So you can see the cessation fund money has decreased to $2 million. Again, this is just saying to everyone here, based on what we know right now, and to meet tax cap obligations or a tax increase kind of a flat from what we experienced last year, 4.12, I made it 4.20, just to keep it at a round number right now because we're missing information. We're looking at a tax levy increase of 2.2 million, which obviously would match the monies that were, so it's pretty flat, not missing, we're not missing any funding from last year, but that's assuming that some of these figures are what I think they're going to be. However, that's injecting $7.4 million of fund balance. It's a lot of fund balance to be putting into the budget. It's my, I think, with this projection, you're not looking at information that you know enough about yet, right? So just know that that is one scenario. If we were to go with just to cover that $2 million that we're missing from the cessation money, that you'd have to inject $7.4 million to come up to the budget that we're projecting right now. On the bottom of that screen, you're going to see the pilot and the cessation money. So that first line where it says reduction of pilot payment, that includes the money that we're getting from the cessation funds and the whole tech agreement for the pilot. So it's a combination of both. And then the percentage that we're at this year is 40%. I don't know if everyone knows, but from the first year that it started, we get reduction of 10% every year on the cessation amount that we get from the state. The whole tech piece of the pilot is going to be stagnant for the next 4 years. It'll be the same number. It was renegotiated in May of 2024, and that's $3.1 million. So this is, again, these are just projections as of today, and I wouldn't put a lot of weight into it. We're going to see a lot of changes before. So scenario 2, I thought was a little bit more realistic, unfortunately, with looking at a 7.1% increase in the tax levy, because if the tax cap doesn't yield that for us, then you're talking about either going over the cap, or using more fund balance to make it work. So right now, this scenario has $5.9 million of fund balance in it. I wanted to give you an idea of using 5.9 versus 7. Where do we fall with a tax levy if that's, if those are the situations that we're in. But again, the state aid, I fully expect it to increase over the number that's there. I don't want to say too much because you never know when it's going to come back, but that would be my assumption at this point, that will go up. It will help us out somewhat. And I think overall we know we're losing $2.2 million in the cessation fund automatically. We also know that responsibly we build money into our budget every year. We don't go to the penny. We make sure that we have some sort of a cushion in our budget. I mean, it's normal. Right now, I would say on a $97 million budget, a 2%, cushion built into a budget is not much to build in. And that would give you like $2.2 million plus another $2 million, safely saying that I think it would be responsible at this point to fall somewhere in between, maybe use $4 million worth of fund balance. Can we do it? I don't know. We have to, again, wait for the tax cap information, wait for the pilot information, and the state aid information. It's really too early, but these are all things to think about when you're looking at these numbers or formulating questions that you have for me, because I think it will help you understand the entire process and the calculation of how we come up with those projections. And I'm going to ask everybody if they have any questions at this point.
No, not yet.
Not yet? Oh, I'm not supposed to say that. Okay.
So before we move on, I'm going to lead the board through a couple protocols here. If we could go to the next slide. But before we move on, I want to thank Jill for her detailed approach in providing both a financial look, her budget, and then also some of the background and considerations we have to give as we develop a proposed budget. So last meeting that we discussed the budget, we asked the board for parameters, even though it's very early on, and the board didn't even know many of the variables at that time, that they wanted to see as we build the budget. And these parameters we will continue to live in until the board asks us to make a change or asks our advice on something that causes us to change, because it's a relationship that we have now because it's the superintendent's budget built upon what we think is best for our students, the feedback that I receive from our teams, and then also it's the board eventually will have to adopt, so the board has to have a comfort with what they are adopting. These are the current parameters that you have given us to build the budget, and again, subject to change, so I'll just put those up for review. And then very quickly, we'll go to our current budget calendar, just so you know where we stand in terms of a timeline. That's on the next slide. I'm not going to insult your intelligence and read that. And then Jill, if we go to the next slide. If you recall last year, we asked the board to, based upon the presentation that they've seen, any thought that they've given to this, and also any information they've found on their own, or they'd like to ask through questions right now. Do you have any questions on the presentation you have just seen? Is there any parameter that you would like us to consider changing? This is where we receive your input to help us make tweaks to the budget as we continue to develop. Yes, this is where you can ask a question. Sorry.
Quick question. Is it possible for us to add the fund balance totals on the projections as well? Just because I think in just looking at this, as you look at it going across, you don't see the decrease of what's going to be left in that fund balance. And I know that was one thing we had on the presentations from last year.
Okay.
And then my second question, I guess, Exhibit 1 was just, would it be I'm assuming this would be the 4.2% if we decided to do the $7.4 million out of the fund balance, right?
Right, it was just to give you
Oh, no.
an idea.
I have a lot of concerns with that because the auditor who was here in 2023 in December, we basically needed to have our fund balance last us until 2028 in order for us to start making up all the cessation funds that we're going to lose. And if we start spending all that money now, what's going to happen when we really need it? Instead of getting $8 million, we're getting $1.9 million. So that's very concerning for me. And I guess my last question is, we're not going to know what the tax cap is until another couple of weeks, right?
Yeah, I think we'll have a much better idea by the 15th of January. I'll have those 2 extra numbers that I need to complete it.
Yeah.
So that will tell definitely a better story, and it will allow us to project better as well.
And I just wanted to say, I feel like the last 2 years, we've actually been able to save a lot of money, which has allowed us to grow our fund balance. And if for any reason the state aid doesn't come back with their new formula to be the number we're getting, or if we're not fortunate to get more, then I think that's something that us as a board also have to consider as well, right? We can't just keep doing these very small increases that have been done, right, when we have all these things that we need to do for the schools. So I think that's important, once we start to get all those numbers, and using $7 million this year just to bring it down to 4%, that's not feasible, because by the time we get to 2028, people are probably going to be looking at 20% tax increases if we're trying to cover the losses for that money. So personally, for me, I would never recommend that.
Can I ask, because I was looking at that too, if we go back to slide 33, are you recommending that maybe we change one of these budget parameters, that we exceed the tax limit? Or are you recommending that we look at ways to create efficiencies and decrease our budget?
Well, I think if anything, we need to be looking at just projection 2, which is what we've been, in the past projections, $5.9 million is what we've been using as the number coming out of the fund balance. But the 2 years prior to that, we haven't been using that fund balance. We've been fortunate to get more money from state aid. But with all the new calculations now, what if we don't get that money from state aid? Right? Using $7 million this year, what happens when we really need it in 2028?
No, I agree.
When we have nothing.
No, I agree with you, but
I think that'll force people to leave the district.
I'm looking at slide 33 when we're going to budget season, and we're looking at our budget parameters. Our first parameter is to ensure that we don't exceed the tax limit. Are we saying the tax levy? Are we saying that we are going to change? Because they need to know. Are we going to change that? Or are we going to flip it? Because in order to do that and not do what you're saying, and I agree with what you're saying, then we have to look at ways to save money.
But I feel like I think that's a premature question to just address now.
Okay.
Because there's so many variable unknowns right now that we don't know until January when Jill actually starts to get
Right.
those numbers.
Overall, it's going to be a combination, right?
Right.
It's going to be efficiencies as much as we can. It's going to be responsibility in using only amount of certain, obviously at your charge, what fund balance you'd like to use. But yes, it could get to that where we would be having a discussion about going over the tax cap because you don't want to use an excessive amount of fund balance. So those are the 3 main things that you have to consider after we find out some more information. I think we'll know more, we can talk about it further, deeper, and people have other opinions about it at that time.
Do these projections of our fund balance, and I don't think the full number is on here, I don't see it, somebody can point it out to me.
No, it's not.
Okay. Does that include what we're projecting having left over from the prior school year? Are you using that across this?
Well, there's no fund balance listed here, so I can tell you our audit is just about complete. We're getting a draft of it on Thursday. I expect to see $29 million in our fund balance at the end of this school year.
That's good.
At the end of the last school year.
That's
I'm sorry.
great.
So to give you an idea what we're working with, but again, if the 20, and I don't want to dwell on it, but the $20 million that everyone feels is, look, that's supposed to be built into the, that doesn't necessarily have to be in a cessation fund. It can be, right? It can be in any part of the fund balance. It just makes up the fund balance. But remember, that money is, it's earmarked over the net. If we're able to save more, you can put the 2.2 towards the budget every year. But again, the budget's increasing every single year, so you have to take a gradual grab at that fund balance to sustain it, or you will be going over the cap and you won't be going under anymore.
That's why we've been doing this. Right?
Correct.
At some point, the intention was to actually utilize it. It's just a matter of how much of that do we utilize. It's also important to make sure that our other accounts are funded for our needs, right? So
right. And to Tamika's point, because she's on the audit committee, so she hears a lot of conversations that we've been having. We have been able to turn back what we've been putting in the budget as a possible use of fund balance and not having to use it because of the efficiencies that we've been able to keep and keep a watch on what we've been spending. So it's all a combination of those three things at the end of the day. So.
And the efficiencies led to you increasing the fund balance to the 29.
Correct.
Yeah. Which would be what the 7 million or the
would come from
5.9 million would come from.
Yes.
I'm sorry, one last question. Sure. For 26-27, there's just 1.58% for the proposed budget in percentage.
Yeah, I wouldn't look too far
Okay.
out on this because it was nearly impossible to
Okay.
start making projections without real numbers for state aid. Yeah,
Gotcha.
I feel like we're making up stuff after.
Gotcha. Okay.
Any other questions or feedback?
feedback is a great start, I think. Thank you.
I just had one technical question of some clarity. You said before the bond rating will be affected by our use of the fund balance.
Sure.
Can you explain a little bit what you
Sure. So when we go out to borrow money for any purpose, and we are going to be going out to borrow money to fund this capital project over the next 2 years. It's going to be a 2-phase project so far. So when we go to do that, there's the bond rating companies come in and they ask a lot of questions and they want to know who they're lending to. They want to know, are you a responsible school district? Are you saving money? Are you building money into your fund balance? Are you going to run out of money in a few years? Like, what does it look like to them?
So they have access to all of, they will get all
They
of that
won't,
as part
they
of our.
won't lend you money. I mean,
Right.
they
Like-
report to the lending
Right.
institutions who lend you the money, and they rate you. So AA, AAA. You don't see AAA really anymore, but there's AA, single A. You want to be a AA when you are borrowing a good sum of money. You're not going to get good interest rates without it. So in the long run, they might fund you, but you're going to be funded at a much higher rate of interest. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
We're not done yet. Just a few more.
You have more to this?
On the presentation, yes.
Okay.
So at each presentation, it'll follow the similar format. More of a 30,000-foot view of each department. Jill, we really wanted to get some information out there and help inform it before we go into those departmental budget presentations. Then we'll ask the board to review current parameters and make any adjustments. We'll ask for your continued questions and feedback on what we should be doing in terms of developing the budget. And then we'll go through some reminders. So if we go to the slide about the 25-26 budget vote, just so everybody can start to mark their calendars.
This?
Next, a couple more slides. This is just on the vote. The previous one was on development, the budget development events such as our line by line. This is budget vote information. As you can see here, we will be conducting a vote on May 20th. If a revote is needed, that would be conducted on June 17th. If we go to the next slide, if the district has to go into contingent budget, so we have, if the first budget is not approved by the voters, we have a couple options. We can immediately adopt a contingent budget, which means that we do not have a levy increase from over that of last year's under certain parameters. We could put up the same budget for a revote, or we could put up a revised budget for a revote on the 17th of June. If we do have to adopt a contingent budget, if we immediately go to a contingent budget after the first vote, or the second vote fails to be ratified by or passed by the community, we would then we would be forced to adopt a contingent budget, and that means that we would have to keep the same levy increase as we had this year. And these are some of the rules. And then if we go to the next slide, that's the last one?
That's the last.
So this is where we say thank you for your time and attention. And thank you, Jill.
Oh, you're welcome.
I'll turn it back over to you, President Mills.
Okay, well, we're moving on now to the superintendent's update.
So it's back to me.
So it's back to you.
So first of all, I want to welcome everybody back from hopefully what was a restful and relaxing holiday recess. First, I do want to spend some time addressing the food service establishment inspection surveys reports that were issued by Westchester County Public Health Department. And I want to reiterate, or I want to state that ensuring the health and safety and quality of our food service and the general cleanliness of our buildings remains a top priority for the Hendrick Hudson Central School District. Part of that work is to work closely with health inspectors, known as sanitarians, if you didn't know that, for the food service side, to ensure that safeguards are in place to prevent food contamination. These inspections are conducted through food evaluations of our food service facilities, and then we are providing written reports that categorize the finding of those inspections into two categories. The first category is called a critical violation, and that is any violation when the inspection is occurring that is directly related to factors that could lead to a foodborne illness. There are also non-critical violations, and these are violations that inspectors may identify when they visit that are related to the maintenance and cleanliness of the food service operations. Historically, our district receives one, maybe two, or maybe zero inspections throughout the years. Our most recent inspections took place in the fall and just before our school break. During these inspections, our food service staff, our custodial staff are present to address any findings and to partner with the inspectors on how they can continue to align to those regulations and that often update and actually can vary from inspector to inspector. Once finalized, the reports are shared with Aeromark, our food service contractor, the head custodian of the building, and the food service leaders within that building. Even when a violation is corrected during the inspection, the sanitarian is required to document that according to the relevant code. The specific findings that become public-facing, such as the one shared by a media outlet recently, do not include the detailed findings or information related to how they might have been addressed within that inspection. If you follow these exciting board meetings, you'll hear me regularly emphasize our commitment of the administration and staff to continuous improvement. Feedback from inspections such as these provides us with valuable insights into how we can do our jobs better. I am confident that all issues raised in the most recent inspections have been thoroughly addressed. Just so everybody knows, no re-inspections were required. A re-inspection would be required if there was a serious concern that we were not addressing the situations that arose within an appropriate manner. All violations from the most recent inspections were addressed or resolved in a satisfactory manner before the inspection was completed. We have not yet received reports from for the high school and middle school of our recent inspections. However, we have received reports that I'm going to read into record tonight that highlight the specific findings and hopefully provide some clarity to the community on what was found specifically, because when you do see just the code that was violated, it can be concerning, and we want to make sure that we do address that. So I will read the inspections into the record. First, we'll start off with the Buchanan-Verplank inspection. The Buchanan-Verplank inspection occurred on October 24th by Inspector Delana Huang. No critical violations were reported and no re-inspection was required. There was a violation identified related to the code of poor sanitary design, construction, installation of equipment, and utensils. The inspector found that there was a metal paneling used between a sink and the wall of a walk-in refrigerator that had a gap in it, between that and the wall, and the inspector did not feel that you could clean behind that wall with that gap there. So they recommended that we seal it, and that is taking or has taken place. There was a violation related to the code of improper sanitary facilities and controls. The inspector found 2 items there. A mop sink was not properly draining, and they observed standing water on the floor underneath the sink. They also observed an adequate air gap of 1 inch was not provided at a food prep sink across from the cook line. So if you imagine what's occurring at this time, the inspector is accompanying food service staff and our head custodian, and they're having an interaction pointing out these items, and even if they're addressed at the same time, to document what was identified, the report had to be issued and noticed. So that is what occurred at Buchanan Verplank. The Furnace Woods inspection occurred on December 18th, 2024 by Inspector Delana Wong. Re-inspection is not required, and no critical violations were reported. There was a violation, a non-critical violation for poor sanitary design, construction, installation of equipment, and utensils. The inspector found that there was shipping film on a reach-in refrigeration unit in front of the service line, and that shipping film could not be easily cleanable. So if you've ever bought a new appliance, they have that I actually keep it on my appliances as long as my wife will let me, because I think it keeps it newer. But the inspector felt that you could not adequately clean that appliance appropriately with that film on there. There was also a non-critical violation for improper sanitary facilities and controls. The inspector found that there was not a hand washing sign in the employee restroom in the kitchen. There was also a non-critical violation for insect rodent control, and of course that is concerning. The inspector observed rodent droppings in dry storage area on the floor underneath the shelving unit. So the first thing that was done, immediately we swept up and sanitized that area. The Frank G. Lindsay inspection was completed on December 9th, 2024 by Inspector Delana Huang. No re-inspection is required and no critical violations were reported. There was a non-critical violation for food not protected in general. The inspector found a couple items. They observed a bag of onions to be stored directly on the floor in the walk-in refrigerator unit when you are required to have 6 inches of clearance between the storage, the floor, and the food items. There was also a shelving unit in the walk-in freezer with stored on it, not to provide 6 inches of clearance. I believe it was rather 4 inches of clearance, and the inspector felt that was not easily movable for cleaning underneath. So again, as an example, we would then identify that as something that we need to engage in our practice to make sure that we can properly clean underneath. Even if we are cleaned underneath, the inspector did not see that it would be adequate for us to clean underneath. There was also a non-critical violation noted for poor sanitary design, construction, installation of equipment, and utensils. The inspector found that there was a 3-bay sink there that was not sealed directly to the wall, so similar to the sink at Buchanan Verplank. There was a gap between the wall that the inspector did not feel that could easily be cleaned with that gap there, so they recommended sealing it. They also had a non-critical violation for improper sanitary facilities and controls. The inspector found that there was water pooling underneath a sink. They interacted with the staff there, who reported that when the drain pipe overflows upon emptying into the 3-bay sink, the inspector noted that they discussed with the staff to coordinate with facility management to address the overflow issues. There was also a non-critical violation for insect and rodent control. The inspector found evidence of rodents present at the time of inspection by a small number of droppings noted to be in the dry storage area underneath the shelving units. So as I said, we do not have the reports from the high school and the middle school. However, the middle school, on the public-facing document that many people have read, was noted to have the one critical violation. And remember, the critical violation deals to something that could potentially cause a foodborne illness. So the critical violation at Blue Mountain Middle School, I believe it was a McRib Day, which I don't know the non-McDonald's term for it, so I hope I don't infringe on copyright infringement, but I believe this is
Rib sandwich.
Rib sandwich, there we go, thank you. Thank you. I've never had a McRib sandwich. When the sandwiches were pulled from the oven to the serving line, they were of proper temperature for service. So the inspector is there taking temperature, monitoring. The inspector, my understanding was, during this time is also training more inspectors. So they're going to be demonstrating to the new inspectors everything that they need to be aware of. When the food was removed from the oven for service, it was a proper temperature to be served. However, the application of the barbecue sauce did bring the temperature of the rib sandwiches down, and the inspector identified that that would be a critical violation because it could lead to a foodborne illness, but worked with the staff there and said you have two options to address this now and in the future. You can either heat up the rib sandwich with the barbecue sauce on it, or you can heat up the barbecue, reheat the items when you apply the barbecue sauce. So the inspector provided meeting guidance and the issue was resolved, but you still have to note it as the potential for in the report. I'd like to emphasize that all of our food service staff are SafeServe certified. Say that 3 times fast. Food service staff are SafeServe certified, which is a nationally recognized program administered by the National Restaurant Association. This certification assures that our staff is well versed in best practices for food handling, preparation, and storage, as well as maintaining proper hygiene, preventing cross-contamination, and adhering to protocols. And I do want to commend our food service team for their dedication to maintaining cleanliness and safeness in our service areas. And additionally, we have extermination services on retainer for a service of at least twice a month. If we identify an issue, we will call them in for additional treatments. And in the food service areas, part of the inspection is the inspector will look at logs to ensure that extermination takes place in any food service facility in order to keep rodents and pests out. On Monday, I met with our food service director and director of facilities to review these inspection reports. Many of them were received over the break. To discuss proactive measures already in place and to prevent future issues. Such items as gaps in the sink and in the wall were present in previous year inspections but were not cited, as this was the first time they were identified as a violation that we should address. I appreciate the leadership shown by both our food service director and director of facilities in ensuring that our students, staff, and faculty remain safe. And we reiterated a commitment to continue to monitor these areas closely to uphold the standards of food service. As an action item, I have mentioned to the board in the past that I plan on implementing or reinstating a health and wellness committee. This committee would be established not only to meet New York State education requirements, and it would also be supported locally by Board Policy 4510, which if you've been following along, it has not been updated since 2016, and needs to be, as the 2016 version in the policy manual aligns to regulations from 2008 guidelines, and those guidelines were updated in 2010. This committee would serve a different purpose than our established safety committee. New York State establishes that all districts must have a health and wellness committee that meets at least 4 times a year to oversee and establish school goals for school health and safety programs. The committee's membership will include parents, students, instructors, health professionals, school administrators, community resources. In previous districts, we've had our insurance agent, our district's insurance agent represented, first responders, because this will be a committee that will not only be made aware of any injury reports and review injury reports that are submitted, they'll also review fire inspection reports, and one major thing from fire inspection is adhering to fire regulations, such as not having excessive paper on walls, which is tough in school districts to do. So having the input of groups such as fire and first responders is helpful on the committee. The committee will investigate and resolve health and safety complaints, such as those related to indoor air quality, faculty issues, and pest management. This committee also must inspect if there's any capital projects going on. They have to tour that facility to make sure that all of our stakeholders are up to date on the conditions of that. And a related question was recently posed to me after these reports came out on how we refresh our cleaning supplies. Specifically those, once we do address an issue, how do we keep those supplies clean so we don't have cross-contamination? Again, our custodians are trained in measures such as that, but specifically when cleaning up a spill, we first use an absorbent to soak up the liquid. Afterwards, the spill is swept into a dustpan and disposed of in the area cleaned. For mopping floors, such as bathrooms and kitchens, Buckets are always filled with disinfectants designed to kill germs and bacteria. After use, we thoroughly wash our mops and hang them. If the mop starts to show signs of degradation, such as odor or fraying, it is replaced. They're not discarded after every use, but if they become degraded, they are replaced appropriately. Other cleaning items, such as dustpans and brooms, are washed and cleaned, particularly when they come into substances such as rodent droppings or vomit. So that is an update on the health inspection reports. My only other item is related to the National Day of Mourning honoring the passing of the 39th President of the United States, Jimmy Carter. So tomorrow our nation will come together to honor the life and legacy of Jimmy Carter, who dedicated his life to public service, human rights, and humanitarian efforts. While schools in Hendrick Hudson Central School District will remain open on this National Day of Mourning, I have asked our administrators to ensure that this day is appropriately recognized during class, specifically working with their faculty to incorporate moments of reflection about President Carter's contributions where appropriate, particularly in our history and civic social studies class and other relevant classes. At this time, there are no questions requiring follow-up, but I will make sure that Ms. Tehan's questions are followed up by the next board meeting. My son was supposed to have hockey at Bear Mountain, but apparently that got canceled, so I'm sure he's watching, so I'm going to tell him to go to bed now, and I will turn the floor over to Dr. Stephen Garcia, our Assistant Superintendent for Human Resources and Leadership Development, to provide his update to the Board of Education. Oh, yes.
Can I just say one quick
Sure.
thing before you move on?
Sure.
Is this on? No. I just wanted to thank you. I know it's somewhat tedious to go through the health inspection reports and read them into the record, but as a parent in the district and, a human being, it was very disconcerting to read, and I think a lot of us read it online. It was out of context, and you have more information than most of us do. So for you to share that like immediately and not let people, fear what was going on, it sounds like everything was very thoroughly addressed. So I just wanted to thank you for dealing with that quickly and for letting us know. It certainly made me feel better.
Any other questions on that? I know I went through it kind of quickly.
You should try to record it next time. Understood.
Happy New Year, everyone. So we've been busy the past few weeks as we had the posting for the Assistant Superintendent for Curriculum Instruction Assessment position closed last Sunday. I want to thank all the stakeholders who participated in either the surveys or the focus groups. It's very helpful. We developed a leadership profile, which I shared with the board. That leadership profile is going to be key for us as we develop questions for the interviews, but also as we assess the qualities of each candidate and the fit for the school district. So the superintendent's cabinet will be reviewing all 106 applicants for the position, and I think that is a very good group. We've initialized that this week, and then what we do next is that we'll identify those who will be screened with us as we select those who would meet with the larger stakeholder group, which we have yet to form. So we'll talk about that at a future meeting. So we are on time in terms of our frame for filling that position. You may have noticed that the director of K-12 PE Health and Athletics, that posting went up on OLAS on Monday. We will run that through March 16th and look at the applicant pool there as well. Right now, as of the past 2 days, we have 14 applicants on OLAS, which is a good crew. And we'll keep you updated on how that search process goes. As you know, Mr. Baker's retiring at the end of December, this calendar year now, 2025. But we really want to get ahead of that because a mid-year change is sometimes challenging. So if we can find a excellent candidate and have them reviewed and approved by the board by the end of this school year to possibly even begin and work with, collaborate with Mr. Baker before he leaves sometime in the fall. So we'll talk about that as well. One thing we had today, just so everyone knows, we know the retirement incentive for teachers was approved by the board before the end of the last new year. And today we actually had a meeting with about, I think, 15, Mike, about 15 teachers who joined us. The teachers wanted sort of like an opportunity to have a Q&A session with us and Jill and Fran as well, to kind of get a sense of a comfort level, because it is a difficult decision for people to decide that it's time to move on and retire from the school district. So it was a good opportunity for them to really inquire about benefits and the scope of it, when they have to write the letter and so forth. That letter to us, to the board, and to the superintendent to retire for the intent, to resign for the intent of retiring, would come to us next Wednesday, right? So we'll keep you updated in terms of how that goes. And like I said, I think it was a good conversation with them. And we also, emphasized that if they had any other questions, to kind of keep that avenue open, because like we said, we understand that this is a difficult decision for many of them. And, they've had many, many years, and they've touched intellectually so many children here over the past decades. So we want to make sure that they're respected in their decision as well.
Thank you, Dr. Garcia. And before I move on to Ms. Joy's update, not to dissuade any potential candidates, but that Health and Wellness Committee would be headed by the individual that we do hire for the Director of Health, PE, and Athletics. So
Yes.
that's how that structure would work. So thank you, Dr. Garcia, and I'll turn it over to Ms. Joy for her update on technology and innovation.
All right. Thank you. Happy New Year to everyone. So I'll start with some of the updates from the holiday that we did. I kind of mentioned some of the things that the team would be working on. So one of the biggest accomplishment is, for months now, we've been trying to do the wireless and wired failover project that we had started during the summer, which is basically our high school and middle school becoming a core for the technology. So we had one core, I think I mentioned it before, just the high school. If high school went down, the entire district went down in the past. Now we do finally have, it's not a wood, but we have high school and middle school now acting as our core. So if high school went down, middle school will pick it back up, and we can still have instruction and business as usual. So that project was completed, mainly headed by our network administrator, Brian Scherer. So that's done. The other things that we usually do inventory in the district twice a year during the summer and a mid-year, which is actually a requirement for NIST, which is our National Institute of Standards and Technology. So that started in the mid-year. We didn't complete it because we also had, as I mentioned, a recycle pickup, which we also do twice a year, mid-year, and at the end of the year. So they finished the recycle, but the inventory is not complete. We probably would complete it during the February break. Another thing that I was able to complete was I had attended a Final Slide user group. Final Slide is our website, and I was able to finish the policy corner. If you didn't get a chance to see it, you should visit the Board of Education and the policy corner. It is now ADA compliant and translated, which was a requirement. So take a look at that. I would love to get feedback. It is, you can do keyword search and things like that, so it makes it easy for you to search through our policies. Started working with the high school on AP testing. If you haven't heard, College Board has moved most of the AP testing to online. Some of them are hybrid. We used to do AP testing out of the Buchanan Fire Department. Nick, Brian, my network administrator, and myself, we visited the place because it really does change everything, because we're going to be running everything through computer now, not paper and pencil. So we're still looking at that venue if it's a possibility. If not, we might have to find a place at the high school to do the AP testing. So more to come on that. Also, this week I was able to meet with Amanda, our security person from Alturas, and also Anthony Morlini to meet with Day Automation, our security company vendor and looking at some of the cameras around the district. I don't know if you know the difference when it comes to analog versus digital cameras. We have a lot of cameras around the district that are still analog, which we do have to make it work. It's going to eventually not work, and many of those cameras are getting very fussy when you look at those feeds. So our account executive is going to be meeting with us later this month, doing a walkthrough through the high school and middle school to look at some of those areas to see which cameras needs to be replaced immediately versus what cameras can be put on a 5-year plan for replacement. Because we haven't really looked at this area in the past. It's kind of like somebody asks, we need a camera there, we replace it. We haven't really had a security budget that can take on and replace, kind of like the technology budget where we replace equipment every 5 years kind of thing. So we will be doing that walkthrough later this month. And I'll give you an update on what that is as well. So that's everything from technology. Yes.
Can I make two comments? One, we looked at the policy corner that you did on Monday, and it looked phenomenal. I loved the outlay of it. I loved how easy and hopefully like user-friendly it is for people. And this way, like you said, you can search, and you gave a little icon for all the different groupings. So I thought that was a really nice touch. Two, the security cameras have been like a huge thing for me here. So I love that you're going to look into it. And one of the things I know is that a lot of the cameras are like the single way. Can we also look to see if they can be dual-sided? Because I did notice in a few times when we did walkthroughs, there's either cameras that aren't working or there's a lot of blind spots. And
right, and we did discuss that instead of just replacing the analog with the digital. Like, for example, we were at the high school gym. There's 4 cameras there. They're all analog cameras. But at the time, all they had was, they call like a bullet camera, just straight out. So now they have like the 2-headed, 3-headed, 360 degrees. So you can actually put one camera up that gives you, of course it's more expensive, but it gives you a 360 view of the area. So that's what I kind of told the account executive, rather than just replacing analog with the digital, we want to look at what can we do, because it's also, server, right? We replaced one of the NBR servers last year, but one of them is very old. I just kept it in place to do load balancing, so we might have to, add another server. We also have to look at all of these cameras feed right back to our closet. Do we have enough ports on our switches, right? So it's not just replacing one-to-one, right? There's a lot that goes behind it. So that's why we're doing the walkthrough, to find out are there areas that we have multiple cameras but that can be replaced with one. So if I have 4 feeds going back into into her closet, get very territorial there with our closet. Instead of having 4 ports used, maybe you can do it with one.
And also, like I said, looking to, as you're doing your walkthrough, if there's any areas that don't have cameras at all that you think should, I would love just put everything on your wish list, and then from there we can look at budget-wise.
I rely on Amanda and the principals to do that rather than myself. Like, I would be from the IT side looking at capacity-wise, but Amanda has a good handle on, where the principals are requesting the cameras and where the blind spots and things like that. So I would
thank you for your work. I for 2 years have been asking for that, so I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Joy. I'll now turn it over to our Executive Director for Curriculum Instruction, Dr. Reller.
Good evening and Happy New Year to everyone. I feel as though we're actually been back for several weeks. There's been a lot going on. I will remind you, I can't remember if I did bring this up at the last December meeting, but I did have an opportunity, along with Paula Sorrells, who is one of our science teachers at the high school, to attend a BOCES showcase on universal screeners. And we've had a conversation this past year, especially since we brought in the new ELA program, that is perhaps time to abandon iReady, which has been our universal screener for more than 10 years, and potentially look at NWEA, which is more closely aligned to the ELA program we're using. Those programs talk to each other, would save teachers a couple of steps in their progress monitoring. Paula and I had lunch while we were there and chatted briefly that she also felt that it would be a good fit for us. I did ask Benita to get us a quote from Southern Westchester BOCES, and we'll see what that looks like and have further conversations with the teaching staff. We also, I want to thank the elementary PTA once again for inviting me to briefly review the report card updates that are in place for elementary. Those report cards will be going home to families the beginning of February this year. Not a lot of changes, but I would say that more detail will be provided to families in both the ELA and the math category. We tried to keep the format as similar from one grade to another, so if you have a first grader and a fourth grader, it looks the same when you open that up to view it, which is helpful. I will be posting those to the curriculum website along with a parent guide for folks who were not able to join us, and for folks that come into the district at another point in time, just as reminders why we did what we did and how that should be looked at. Of course, as I said that evening, your teacher is always your first point of contact, so when you do receive it, if you have any questions, they are your go-to folks, and they certainly will be able to explain to you what those items are. We have our PD committee meeting district-wide on Thursday at Furnace Woods from 2:30 to 4 o'clock. If you're on that committee, I look forward to seeing you there. We are hosting on Friday our first visit from the New York State Office of Early Learning, who will be with us visiting all of our UPK classrooms, those at Rising Star and both BV and Furnace Woods. So we haven't had this done before. It's part of the expansion grant. There is a huge quality assurance protocol that we are working on complying with, both the district and both collaborators. It's been an interesting process, and I look forward to meeting our representative on Friday and having her give us feedback on the program. Mike, do you want to jump in?
No, I was just getting ready to talk into the mic when you were done.
Okay.
I wasn't going to interrupt.
Okay. We are getting to that time of year, so we're starting now to look forward to 25-26, and that means we need to get a calendar committee going. So we have started to gather 25-26 calendars from our local partners. We start always with BOCES, and I gave a draft earlier today to Mike to look at. We'll look at it administratively, and then we'll pull the calendar committee. And that means that representation from all of the units will come together to look at what the next school year would look like. What else do we have here? I had the pleasure of attending a BOCES presentation from NYSID on Tuesday, along with Janine Rizzoli, who is our elementary ELA coach. The presentation was reviewing an ELA assessment tool. The district will be required every fall to provide an attestation that our ELA program aligns with science of reading. There's a whole series of checkpoints that we will go through. And some of that, by the way, will also be used for walkthrough purposes with our building principals. So that was an interesting day. And lastly, again, looking forward to next year, we are getting ready to open kindergarten registration. So that process will begin on January 16th. Known families will start to receive letters from both Mr. Cohen and Dr. Kramer, probably the end of this week, the beginning of next. Benita kindly worked on getting the portal ready for us. So we are looking forward to that process, and we are also looking forward to opening up the UPK enrollment process, which will start on January 21st. So we are giving our two collaborators who are eager to continue with us, and we have no reason not to continue with them, an opportunity to update some of their information for next year so that parents can look at those 2 opportunities and make decisions about where they feel their child would be best served, and then that registration process will begin on the 21st of January. So you'll hear me, I will try every week every board meeting to remind folks to please register their children so that we can get a handle on what we're looking for in terms of enrollment and sections. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Reller. And not to put you on the spot, if my child is enrolled in UPK, is there an automatic rollover into registering me for kindergarten?
Yes, so if your child is at BV, Furnace Woods, or even at Rising Star, they are in our Infinite Campus system, and they will automatically roll forward as a kindergarten student in the district, unless you decide not to do that, in which case, please let us know. But if you have any questions about that process, I would love to chat with you. You can certainly call me at the district office, or you can speak with Debbie Marriott, who's our registrar and has taken your information prior. But we are looking forward to welcoming our newest little ones.
Thank you, Dr. Reller. And now I'll ask our Acting Director of Pupil Personnel Services, Mr. Chris Moreno, to provide an update on Pupil Personnel Services. Chris?
Thank you. Happy New Year, everybody. CSE season is approaching very quickly, so the office is working on scheduling and sending out invites for all of the annual reviews. In addition to that, PPS has hosted several focus groups and conversations with various stakeholder groups throughout the district to assess the ongoing needs in the special education population. So we've been meeting with teachers, related service providers, administrators, and parents most recently to assess the needs of the district and make sure that we are providing the best possible opportunities for all of our students. And I just want to thank everyone who's taken part in those and encourage if there's anybody else who'd like to either formally or informally take part in those conversations to reach out to our department and we'll set those up. So thank you.
Thank you, Chris. And so President Mills, at this time, you've had superintendent's update and the cabinet update, and I'll turn it back over to you.
Okay, it is now time for our policy readings. Right? Okay. So, we're starting with the second reading of Policy 2270, School Attorney. The Board of Education shall retain...
Motion with reading.
Second. All in favor? Okay, so we're bringing this one back. This one was just explaining the role of our attorney. Does anyone have any questions? Elizabeth? Does anyone want to make a motion to approve policy 2270?
Second.
All in favor? The next one is second reading, revision, policy 2330, executive session. The Board of Education.
Motion to waive the reading.
Second. All in favor? This was updating the wording of executive session, what we do in executive session, bringing it up to date and law.
Motion to approve policy 2330.
Second. All in favor? Okay, this is a first reading, a revision to policy 4311.1, display of the flag. The Board of Education believes that the flag of the United States is a symbol of the values of our nation.
Motion to waive the reading of policy 4311.1.
Second.
All in favor? So this one is required, and it's being updated with the legal rules, basically the reference. So we'll bring this one back. Okay, this is first reading, policy 4311.1R, display of the flag regulation. Flags displayed.
Motion to waive the reading.
Second.
All in favor? This is the regulations to the...
So this one gave a little more detail, while the other one just said the days that it should be, not the days, just when. This one goes into more detail, and it actually brought out a conversation for us about our flags and how we want to maintain our flags and have lighting potentially for the flags, and when they're indoors, where they're going to be, and on the days that they should be there, and it listed all of the required days. I believe that it should be flown.
Yeah, and part of the conversation was,
Yeah.
yeah, part of our conversation around this was what we currently do, because a lot of days that the flag is meant to be at half-staff or out, our buildings are not open, right? So we had to sort of make sure that we had a solution to make sure that we have a flag.
For example, like Thanksgiving Day and Christmas Day, we were saying would it be feasible always to have somebody who can come and fly the flag? So we were talking about solutions to that in terms of, like we said, having
it must be at the district office
indoors
lighted,
and then having it lit. So that might be something that we'll have to put into our budget. That'll be something that we'll have to put into our budget to make sure that we are legally following the guidelines that are there.
Because you have 5 buildings and a district office, right, and a transportation department. You have to have someone come. The flag, I think every day the flag goes up and the flag comes down. It's properly folded and stored. So obviously there's no one present. So we had to make sure that there was a solution to that. So I think we have that. So we were comfortable putting this one up. But this is a legal. This is not us. We just had to make sure we had a solution that was falling within the parameters of what we're legally bound to do. So this one will come back. The next one is the second reading, revision to policy 4321.4, independent educational evaluations. The Board of Education.
Motion to waive the reading.
Second.
All in favor?
Can I just ask a question about? Can a parent choose to get an independent evaluator not included on the district's list and be reimbursed for the amount of the evaluator that's listed on the district's list?
So just to clarify before I turn it over to Chris, the question is if there is a need for an independent evaluation established by the district and the family, can the family choose the independent evaluator and be reimbursed?
Right.
I think to the amount.
For the same amount that the district allows for the other independent evaluators?
Yes, that's correct. So the letter is presented, and there's an amount that is presented as far as how much the reimbursement would be made to for each individual evaluation.
So to clarify too, like if let's say you go to someone and they're more than what the district would pay, they would pay up to the amount that is listed on the BOCES and policy.
Correct, yes.
And you would pay the difference then?
And there's no special procedure that a parent would have to take? They would just say, I'm using this evaluator?
So the procedure would be, there would be a request or a notification to PPS, and then a letter would be sent by PPS informing that we could use an independent evaluator, that we would go through BOCES, or if you so choose, you can direct that you're going to utilize a different evaluator, and the reimbursement amount would be listed on that letter.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Chris.
So this was a second reading.
Motion to approve policy 4321.4.
Second.
All in favor? Okay. The next one is second reading, revision policy 4321.8, impartial hearing officer appointment and compensation. The Board of Education will
Motion
appoint.
to waive the reading.
Second.
All in favor? Does anyone have any questions about this?
No.
And this one we went through last time.
Yeah, we went through this one in detail, yeah, the last time. Okay.
Motion to approve 4321.8.
All in favor? Second reading to retire policy 4420, class size. In order to provide appropriate.
Motion to waive the reading.
Second.
All in favor? We had a lengthy discussion about this the last time. Does anyone have anything new to bring to the table on this?
Did we do like a summary as to why we don't need this part? This might be the last one.
Oh, yes. So we did, yes. We talked about the fact that it's in, yeah, you weren't here, so it was in the teacher's contract, and that supersedes policy anyway, so we just, one, thought it was redundant, and two, after doing our research within policy, we discovered no other district was using this. And in fact, the contract also has, beside elementary, it has all the stipulations for all of the schools, if I answered everything correctly.
And the numbers were the same?
All right.
So the numbers that in our policy are identical?
That was my next.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
There's actually a threshold mentioned in the contract that was actually higher than the policy established.
Okay, so
Motion to retire policy 4420.
Second.
all in favor? Okay. Second reading, policy 6900, sale and disposal of surplus district equipment, books, materials, and supplies. Building administrators.
Motion to waive the reading.
Second, all in favor?
So this one we also had a lengthy discussion on last time, and it was just, it was lengthy, a little bit, just on how the procedure for the district on disposing of textbooks, like things that the district purchases, non-consumable items that the district purchases, and how we dispose of them properly at the end of each school year.
Any more questions on this?
Motion to approve policy 6900.
Second.
All in favor? Okay. The last policy tonight? Almost. Second reading, policy 6900E, textbooks disposal form.
Can you read all the words on this one?
Textbook disposal form. School name, teacher.
Motion
Motion to waive the reading.
Second.
All in favor?
I was waiting for you to read box at 1A. 2A.
Motion to approve code policy 6900E, exhibit E.
All in favor? Okay, that's it.
This time, Cabinet, you are more than welcome to stay, but you can also enjoy your evening, and thank you for your service and your dedication.
Thank you.
They all look around to see who's going to be first.
I'll
Cheerleader goes first.
Thank you.
So we're going on to board comments, new business. Does anyone have any new business? New business? So, Amelia and I do, so it's for everyone, just a discussion around what our first thought exchange might be. Our VP went over to took a little break, she'll be back in a second. But we wanted to talk about there's a conversation around the first thought exchange we put to the community would be around how the board communicates with the community. How do they want to receive information from us?
Do people know what ThoughtExchange is? Do you think?
We'll move it on to Mike to
Sure.
explain.
So I will give a demonstration of where, so if the board has, as a goal and as a follow-up from one of our previous meetings, the board has wanted to make sure that they are communicating with the community in the most efficient and effective way possible. So we wanted to gather input from our community on how we might do that. And we're going to use that through a tool called ThoughtExchange. And I will just, give me 1 second and I'll display my screen here. So ThoughtExchange, rather than a typical survey, has one prompt for respondents to respond to, and then after you respond with your stance on that thought, or your thought, you are given the opportunity to rate other responders' thoughts. And what it does is it crowdsources the overall sentiment and sentiments to that. So we have designed this prompt, which we will then distribute through a number of means. So we will put it through Parent Square. There'll be a link in my weekly update. As we are trying to capture the entire community, not just those who are on Parent Square, we will also have printed copies, and we can have that. That's going to need to be a conversation. The board gives us direction on what we want that paper version to look like and how we distribute it. We have some suggestions. But we are going to be asking the community to respond to this prompt. What are the most effective ways for you to communicate with the Hendricks-Hudson School Board of Education, and how can we ensure that these methods support transparency, accessibility, and collaboration? It normally takes about as long as you need to develop a thought and respond and type it in, and then respond to other users or other respondents to complete it. So it's quite quick, but it also is very powerful in letting us gather the information. So from an administration standpoint, we're looking specifically, we met with ThoughtExchange today, and internally, Carmen and I and Josh Thompson, our PR specialist for BOCES, we met to discuss a rollout of this should the board give us direction and move forward. If we would use this prompt, we would activate this prompt on Friday in my weekly update. And we would then also work with BOCES. I believe Carmen and Josh gave us an update that there's a turnaround of about 3 days once we give them. And Josh has been so efficient. He actually, if I can share my screen, he actually gave us a, I'm trying to do this without going to my email. We have a mock-up that I can send to the board. I just don't want to display my email because it's in my email right now. But the board...
Can I send it to Greg?
Yes.
Greg, can I send it to you?
I'm going to have to stop sharing my screen. So Carmen will share what that prompt will look like while I'm talking. Let me get back to ThoughtExchange. So we will need guidance from the board. We are anticipating having the exchange go live. It's best practice to have it go no more than 14 days. We can send reminders out to individuals who receive it electronically. We could do a number of different things. We could send postcards home at a cost of the printing and the mailing. We could print out simple flyers that we could hang in the libraries and the post offices that people could use their phones to scan for a QR code or to navigate to a link. We could backpack home, but that would really, I think that would be double counting or double communicating, because those would be going to most of the people who have Parent Square anyway. So that's really, we would end the ThoughtExchange in about 2 weeks. We would meet with the ThoughtExchange. We would bring the ThoughtExchange analysts in to help us look at our results, to meet with board leadership and myself. And then we are anticipating at the February 4th meeting, we could present the results of that ThoughtExchange to the board to see how the community would like to engage with you.
What are your thoughts? Did they have any guidance on what the most effective way of asking questions are? I just, like, that's what our question, but maybe it's two-parted, so I don't know if two-parted is the right expression.
When you say ThoughtExchange, you mean the actual?
Yeah. Like,
so it was reviewed with ThoughtExchange. They helped us develop it, and they also they crowdsource it from. ThoughtExchange is so pervasive, and they have such a reach that they have similar exchanges that they share with us, and we pull from them.
They have other schools that use it?
Correct.
Right.
Correct.
And is it also in other languages?
It can be translated.
Translated. And for people that are not tech savvy, I mean, it does seem like it would be pretty simple, but I know there are people that don't want to go online or whatever. We're just going to reach people that are interested in going online and answering a question.
Well, what we could do, we could at the board meeting, if we do put it on the agenda, we could note in the agenda that during the results, prior to the results, we could have, we could present the exchange, and in live, in real time, people could respond, and we could assist them with access to that and allow them to respond at the board meeting. Mm-hmm. That would be an option.
But there's no like real analog way to do it.
Well, that was the question I had, especially for this one, right?
Right.
Because what if somebody...
Because this goes to that issue.
I think of my mother,
right,
who is not tech savvy,
right,
to save her life.
But if there were
and that was-
printouts at
Well,
the
that's
post
what-
office that had this question on it and they could,
we toggled around that
Something
idea of
like
like having the flyers and then potentially having where they could write it and drop it off.
Right.
Or something like there's still, if they know what the prompt is.
yeah, because the
somehow,
seniors and
yes.
like people that,
Yeah, I-
we really want to try to reach everybody, so.
Yeah,
So what would need to occur is that the written feedback would need to then be input into
Yes.
the system for
Right.
it to.
but that could be done by one of us who is more tech savvy than the person who is not,
Yeah,
if need be, but yeah.
cool.
So this is the question that's going out?
This would be the prompt, yes.
And then there's like choices, or they write it in?
So you would write your response. Once you write your response, you're then shown other people's responses, and you're given a 1-star to 5-star rating on that. And you just like I don't.
Are you
is it
able
still
to
called
download
Facebook?
it or no?
Oh, I was also gonna say, to clarify on that too, so let's say Lauren, you're the first person to respond, you have nobody to rate after that.
You can go back.
You are able to go back in anytime that the prompt is open and then see everyone else who has responded and then rate theirs or edit yours.
So you're like rating it, like if you like their comment?
Correct. It'd
So
be
like
similar.
if something got,
Like if maybe somebody posted something you didn't think of and you're like, wow, that's really important.
Or if somebody said, we prefer smoke signals, I mean, obviously, that would probably, I'd moderate that, but somebody could say, no smoke signal, I rate it as a 0, and that would not be brought up to, or 1, excuse me, that would not be brought up to the top when we view our results. But then they do use also AI and logarithm to help the
Collate the answers at the end.
coding the answers and helping analyze what the community is truly feeling and how they'd like to communicate
And
with
if
the board.
Like
something-
themes that rise to the top.
Themes that are
and-
emerging, yep.
And if something is deemed inappropriate from their aspect, they also flag that and you won't be able to see, I think.
Or I could
think,
moderate
yeah,
it, could leave it in.
Like it gets flagged and I think it's something that you would see before it can get posted. And in fact, when we have our next retreat, they're going to do a presentation for us.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
Do we think that this is better than sending out a simple, like Lauren was saying, oh, then you pick like, 4 things that, do you want to receive a paper newsletter from us, or do you want us to have the town hall where you can come and ask questions? This is, obviously this is asking people to take one more step and come up with something. Like I know we all get these surveys and then it's like, what else would you like to share with us? And I'm like, skip, because I don't have time, so I'm just wondering if we think this is gonna get the most.
So from my perspective,
Yeah.
yes, I don't know if that was a question of the board, so if I stepped on the board's toes. I
No,
apologize.
anyone.
From my perspective, yes, you're going to gather more thoughtful, not to use the pun.
Right.
Answers into how your community would like to communicate with you. If we do give them 4 choices, you're going to be limited to those 4 choices that you've given to them.
You could have number 5, like what is your thought on?
I have a clarifying question, and then if you don't know the answer, I guess we can ask when they present. If let's say I'm going in to answer this question as a community member, do I get to see what other people have posted before I comment?
No, you're asked to provide your responses.
Feedback before, okay.
And I don't know this, just throwing it out can you do an IE underneath and give examples, or that's frowned upon?
In terms of when you give the
For the
ratings?
questions.
No, the question
Like
says,
IE newsletter.
such
Oh,
as.
you could write whatever you like.
Right,
Maybe that would be helpful?
I think so.
Oh, in other words, in the prompt.
Yes.
Is that what you would
Option, but
want to
not
limit
limited
to?
I don't think we want to limit it, I think we want to just throw out.
Also, is this going to show the person's name that's responding?
It's not.
Okay.
What I would recommend, because of the way the prompt is structured, is you're diving deeper than just the medium. When you ask, what are the most effective ways to communicate? When you leave it open to that, you're giving them a chance to talk about frequency, medium, mode, those types of, you're truly asking about how your community wants you to communicate with them.
Can we pose a secondary within
I
this?
was just gonna ask that.
Like,
Like, do we pay per question? Or
No,
like,
you
how does
pay
it
per
work?
year.
Okay,
But
so-
the
so we
exchange
could-
itself is limited. I mean, we could add a second part to it.
Like, if we have it out for 2 weeks and we're getting like minimal, we think maybe people aren't understanding or it's too much, that we could add a second question or revise the question or something.
The exchange itself, if you change the prompt, would be different. It would
A whole different.
it would impact the results. So what we can do is we can monitor the exchange and we can send out reminders.
I mean, this is, I will say, this is new to our community, so it's, you know, when things are new, sometimes you get less
Engagement.
engagement, and that's, I think that's, this is
It's
something.
certainly worth a try.
It's,
Yeah,
I think
for
it's,
sure.
this is definitely something that we should try. If we have to send a second one out with more directive, because what we're getting back isn't useful to us, we could do that.
PTAs,
Right.
the senior centers, like just.
Yeah, we have to get it somehow to the rest of our community. That's really the tricky part. So is that us putting it at
That's
post
what it said.
offices? Are we mailing
We
it?
get a mock-up of a postcard that we spoke about.
We can do a small
A small postcards, we did get a mock-up.
And our thanks to Josh Thompson, our BOCES PR service, for making a turnaround within hours for us.
There we go.
Oh,
I think it's worth the first time doing this, my opinion, is to spend the little bit of money on this to get it out to everyone.
Yeah,
And see.
I think it should go to everybody.
Yeah.
It's gonna go to the mailing list that we've done in the past. So all the,
And we could physically bring this to all the senior centers and all the post office and
Can you, I guess
all
you
the
can
bulletin
change the
boards.
language if you go into the QR code, right? Like it's just not.
In terms of the exchange itself, I'd have to double check how to do that.
Let's look into that, because
Some people
you
are-
can't just do
are
two, some,
afraid of-
yeah.
Like, will
QR codes.
people know how to scan the QR code?
That's-
Like, does everybody know how to do?
well, the link, the tiny URL is there too.
that's for
Oh,
something
the
else.
district communication, yeah.
Yeah.
We
wanted
should
to try to
definitely
add
have
that
a
in
link
there.
in
We
there as
probably
well.
do need to put the link in there.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll tell Brad.
And in the electronic, it should be a clickable link.
Yeah, I mean, I personally get frustrated by QR codes myself.
Well, if you get a QR code on your device, you need another, you need
Oh,
another
absolutely.
device to
You need
scan
to
it.
click here or clickable link.
Right. Because I'm always like, oh, I need someone else's phone to scan it if it's on my phone.
Can we go back to the question for a minute? Because I'm looking at the question, and it's how often.
I just need Meg to reshare.
Oh, sorry.
I have a question too. Is there like a word limit on it?
I believe it's 400
Too long to
characters.
me. Seems like a lot of words to me.
When it prompts you after you do the question, that's really the beauty of the thought exchange. But when I look at that question,
Around 150 characters. Let me go back to the question. Sorry, I was multitasking, so I was doing everything badly, poorly. Oops.
that's a lot of tabs.
Yes,
At least put folders.
So it says, what are the most effective ways? I really would like to know what the community wants us to communicate. Like, what information do they want us to communicate on? Is it more policy information? Is it?
That's a different question.
Yeah.
It is a different
Yeah.
question, but, you know, when you're looking at participation, maybe I look at this and I'm thinking, you guys communicate way too much, and I don't even bother.
That's an answer. That's
Correct.
a good answer.
It is an answer,
Yeah.
but so now, we now know that they want us to do newsletters and postcards, but what do they want in the newsletters and postcards? What type of information are they looking for?
I think that's probably the next
Like a
step,
follow-up.
once we figure
Yeah.
out how, like, what comes out of this survey, right? Like, is it more mail, is it more email, like, whatever stands out here is how we're gonna have to start moving forward, like a couple of top answers of things. And then I think that's the next question, right? Like, what other things would you want us to highlight?
Can you make it a two-part question or no?
Yeah, that's what I was
That'll really make
It
people
already is
not
a
even
two-part
respond to
question.
the first question at all.
All right.
I think that could be like our second part once we get, that's just my
I mean, I
thought.
don't even know that you need that second part of it. But
So what if
I
you
mean,
do
that's the
this and you
goal.
only get 20 responses? What does that tell you?
Then we send out more reminders. We have to keep trying. I think that's a part of what we're doing
Or
as a
that
board,
maybe
right?
people don't care and
Right.
we don't need to worry about that component of this role, because if 20 people respond, then maybe it's telling you that what you're doing works and you don't need to reinvent the wheel.
We could always reopen the exchange as well, too. Do a different approach to
Oh,
communicating.
that really, Jeremy, you summed up what I was actually thinking. Thank you.
I don't think that people don't care. I just think.
No, I didn't say
No,
that.
no. I know what you're saying. You're like, if they're not responding, then they're like, who
Maybe
even
they don't
says?
care.
Maybe, right? But I think we can't, as a board, just say, hey, only 20 people responded, so then we don't need to do these things. I think
That's-
a
could be
part
20
of trying
helpful
to pull
responses.
people to engage in what we're doing is to give them the opportunities, right? We can only do so much. We can create the opportunities. If people choose not to take it, they can't say we didn't try, right? But that's a part of our goal, is to communicate more with the community and do more of an outreach. So it's a part of the process, I think. If they don't respond, then they don't respond, but
You might get 2,000 responses.
yeah,
so.
you never know. And I think because people don't have to put their names on it, maybe you'll get a lot more people that'll participate.
But I also think, are we like, that question asks the reader how we'd like them to communicate. Aren't we asking them how they'd like us to communicate with them?
Yeah, that is true.
Ways for you to communicate, oh, I want to email you, or I want to, but I feel like maybe it needs to be the other way.
For us, yeah, for us to communicate with you.
Right.
When are we planning on
What is your
posting
preferred
this?
preference for communication
Friday.
from the board?
Yeah, but
That's it.
I
This
like
Friday.
this because, sometimes we think that people won't email us because they're afraid or they don't want to put their name to something. Maybe there's a form of communication we haven't thought about for them to reach out. Maybe they're too busy to come to a board meeting because they have family obligations.
Yeah, but I think
Right,
Cory's
again, but that's a
right.
different question.
Yeah, we want to be able to communicate with them, right? So what's the best thing we can do to help reach them and engage them? I think that's the first question, right? So then after that, it could be, hey, would you prefer, again, next question, what do we want to get from there?
So we're feeling that the way the question is phrased, the thought prompt is phrased, is that when the word communicate is a one-way street because of the you in front of it. Where the individuals responding to it may just look at it and say, oh, they're asking how I reach out to them,
Right.
rather than reading communication as a two-way.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
Why don't you just put the word engage, like she said, what are the most
Or you
effective
can put
ways what are your preferred ways to engage?
Yeah, what's the
board,
most
Or what are the most
effective
effective
Well, I
forms
think
of
the question
ways to
communication
effectively
with?
communicate?
But is that the question we want, or is the question we want, how do you want to receive communications from the board? That's really the only question, because,
That's that too, yeah.
yeah, it's like, how do you want to receive
I think we
communication?
keep it as simple as that. I mean, it's,
The question, like, as we talk about it, we're asking repeatedly, well, not repeatedly, but like, the topic that seems to keep coming up is, how do they want us to send it? Is it through email? Is it through this or that? So why don't we just say, how do you want to receive communication from the board?
So is that what we're asking, or how,
Is that the goal of the question?
yeah, or is
yeah.
it to like engage with them? Or just for them to get information
Just for
from
them
us?
to get information from us, like what's
Like
the
the
Yeah, I
best?
think it's supposed to be about gathering or getting information from us.
The question is, how can we disseminate the information that we want, or the work that we're doing, to make it possible for them to receive it, so that it's not only through some means that is going to miss people that are expecting some form of communication differently than we give them.
What is the
Via
most
electronic,
effective
right?
way for the board to communicate or highlight anything that we need to? I mean, that's
Or what
kind
is
of-
your preferred
Form of communication.
form of
Communication, yeah.
communication you would like to receive from the board?
Board, yeah.
yeah, I like that.
Text, email, phone call.
Oh,
Don't
That's
give-
like
don't
always
give-
the option.
I'm like, don't give options.
How's this?
I can't see
What are the most effective ways the Hendrick-Hudson Central School District Board of Education communicate with you, and how can we ensure those methods support transparency, accessibility, and collaboration?
Maybe it should have like a few less words.
What are the most effective ways the Hendrick-Hudson Central School District Board of Education can communicate with you?
Yeah,
You
good.
need
There you go, done. Ding, ding. I was like, I don't have my glasses on.
Yes.
I can't see the words.
That's just what we want to ask, so we just keep it simple.
Keep it simple, yeah.
Is that what we want to ask?
That's what we want to ask.
We want to ask a lot of things, so this is what we're starting with. We're testing out the thought exchange as a method of.
The next one I think is gonna be focused on budget.
Yep.
Yeah.
And we're going to use that a little bit differently. We're going to use that a little bit differently.
What do we got next?
What's next on the agenda?
Well,
Yeah,
so
this is
just-
a good trial
So
run.
going forward, we will do a postcard, hit all the ones on the existing mailing list with a couple extra to deliver. This will be in my weekly update, and we will remind people a week out. Thank you, board.
Yeah, that was fun, thanks.
And I'll stop sharing, so
Okay, does anyone have any committee reports?
I don't think we've had any committee reports since the
Yeah,
last
there's
meeting.
been anything from the PTAs to report, or anything? Okay.
No, I mean, we had, the elementary met Monday, but
Margaret
the highlight
covered,
was
yeah.
Margaret, and she talked about that.
Perfect.
You know, the middle school's doing a raffle for parking spots at the, for the upcoming chorus/advanced art show next week.
Thursday?
Yeah. So
6
if
to
you-
8.
if you want a good spot, right?
How do you get a raffle?
Um,
Spot, ticket.
Reach out
Option to
to,
get your name.
What if we win
It's on
and we're
Facebook?
not going?
yes.
Then I'll take your parking
See the
spot.
Blue Mountain Middle
Go to the
School
chorus
Facebook page
concert.
for more information.
They're also selling bags. I saw that
They're
today.
selling bags. Yeah, they have very cute little tote bags with, our logo.
Oh, if we're gonna talk about what's selling, fifth
Yeah.
grade committee is
Yeah.
also selling hen hud blankets on there.
Have
All
one.
right, ladies. Thank you so much for sharing.
Well, I'm
I'll
sorry.
hear from you next year when you have a shokin on your
I
plate.
know.
I'm
What about
sorry.
your kickball thing?
Yes, I'm sorry I did not mention this in my update.
Yeah. Oh,
yeah.
But
He's always coaching.
please come out and support our elementary PTA's fifth grade parent committee kickball tournament.
See?
I will be,
You can't, but you have to go online and purchase spectator tickets for $5 a pop.
Do we want to?
I was strictly coaching
Like
about
to
it.
buy
Where do we
tickets
go
online.
online for that?
There's a link.
It's a
on,
cheddar up
yeah.
link for the fifth grade committee.
I was strictly focusing on the fact that Mr. Riley and I will be coaching the Nautical Knockers.
New York
Oh.
Yeah,
Kids.
you're gonna have Zoe and.
We need a
Yes, that's
thought
right.
exchange to see if people like to buy tickets for these events online.
Is that
It's,
the consensus of the board?
Taking our way the cheddar.
I
Breakfast
think
with frosting.
that there
I just bought a
are
ticket
some
for that.
people on the New York Kids that might overtake you.
Oh,
Reese's with.
Hope is a beautiful thing.
a little trash talking going on
Never
here.
never want to diminish the hope of those who can try. And also, please join us for the Hendrick Hudson Community Education Foundation fundraiser, which will be on Saturday, February 1st, with the Harlem Wizards. I hear they have an amazing guest coach who will be coaching the Hendrick Hudson alumni against the Harlem Wizards with fantastic plays drawn up.
What day is that?
That's you.
That's Saturday. Yes. Who's
Saturday
coach?
what?
Me.
It's him.
Wait, what day?
Saturday, the 1st of February?
Okay.
Did you just have your knee down?
Yes,
That's why he's
that's why I'm coaching.
Oh, you're coaching. Got it.
Those who can't do coach.
The Taylor Spirit Showdown is that
You
day.
might get beat up for that.
It's gonna be a long
Well,
day at the high
physically,
school.
they moved to coaching.
And should we mention too, there's the pre-K and kindergarten dance coming up?
Oh, on February 7th?
Yeah, at
It's the
Furnace
Animal Kingdom. It's
Yeah,
so cute.
but it's for like both schools. at
And a
Furnace
Rising
Woods.
Star.
Yes, pre-K and kindergarten. I'll be back.
I'll be there.
Take planning.
Alrighty.
Motion to close the meeting.
A second.
All in favor?